Welcome to part 2 of Truer Tales from the Bibelot. This is Sophia's Emporium, and my name is Suze. So, we pick up on page 214 in the chapter called A Memory. This is about the crucifixion. He used to come in bubbling over with stories. In the midst of them, a heart spasm would seize him, and he would sink on a chair and turn his face away. As soon as it had gone by, he would begin anew. He could not but laugh and make others laugh, even between one heart spasm and another. At this time, as always, he was giving away with both hands. He had the most beautiful generosity, and to need money was the passport to his purse. He had the curious local patriotism which belongs to Cork men only out of all Ireland. Why? Let the student of history explain. And every Cork man was his brother, in a more special way than which had made every poor devil his brother. He knew to the full the exquisiteness of giving. The study he would have thought least worthwhile would have been the study of finance. All sorts of poor devils were helped on by his bounty. Since his death, the most hopeless, helpless, pushed to the wall waiter, incapable of waiting, met me with a watery eye in a Dublin hotel. "I saw you with him," he said. "Ah, sure, he was a terrible loss to me. I'd never have kept going only for him. And sure we're down in the dirt, myself and my wife and children, since he was taken." "Listen, sir," said a Dublin carman when he lay dying, hailed a friend of his. "How is he?" "He could hardly be worse and live." "Ah, well, may the blessing of God go with him. I wouldn't have a horse and car today only for him." "Tell me how," the friend said curiously. "Did he help you buy back the horse or the car?" "Well, indeed, sir, to tell you the truth, he put a bit of money into both for me. May the Lord reward him." One always knew where he was by the milestone of his gifts. When a basket full of speckled silver trout, or a little barrel of oysters from the Atlantic, or a little jar of whiskey arrived by the parcel post, one always knew by the postmark just how far he had got on circuit. One laughed then, tenderly affectionate, over those late nights of long ago, where he would come sliding in the small hours and disarm your righteous indignation by a present put into your hand before the cool and cutting speeches you had prepared could begin to be uttered. While he lay dying, briefs rained upon his bed with gifts, for everyone loved him, and the carriages of the judges stood outside his door. They sent him comfortable messages. He was to take time to get well. No matter what happened, he would be looked after. One of the hardest-headed men in all Ireland, the most implacable of enemies, but soft-hearted somehow, somewhere, out of sight, came in mysteriously in the dusk of the evening and left a banknote for a large amount on his bed. The other fellows quarreled over "who will devil for me," he wrote in his last letter, and tossed me over the guineas with a laugh. The little nurse who's looking after me, he wrote, woke me out of a most beautiful sleep last night to give me my sleeping draught. During the last month, he had had terrible attacks of heart failure, in which he seemed to die, only to rally amazingly. Between the attacks, he was writing to the clamoring solicitors that he hoped to be back at work in a week, in 10 days. He was lying at a seaside hotel where they had sent him in the hope that he may sleep, the one chance for him. The dispensary doctor, who was called up in the bitter November nights and would come running through the village, dressing himself as he ran. The Dublin specialist, whose motor car would come whizzing almost as soon as he had been run up on the telephone. They fought death hand to hand for him, for love. Neither would accept money for their services. They were splendidly quintoxic, those Irish doctors. Let me repeat that last word. And they were splendidly Quixotic, those Irish doctors. Just the last day he had to live, when he seemed better, he was heard saying over to himself the verses of the Dies Irae, muttering between, "What a coward I am, what a coward I am." He that had fought pain and death with such superb courage, never crying out, never complaining through the immense suffering. I never saw men crying openly as they did at his funeral, someone wrote. Everyone was crying. Indeed, people cry yet at his grave in the village street below the mountains, the street which he used to trudge so cheerfully in the nights and the bad weather. His grave is never alone. He was generous and friendly indiscriminately to the just and the unjust. The beggars loved him, someone said. And there's always a beggar praying by his grave. The last time I was there, a friend of his who was visiting the grave suddenly burst into tears and apologized for his weakness. It was seeing the crocuses coming up above him, he said. I couldn't bear to see them, realizing that he'd never return. He knew everybody between the 4 seas of Ireland and was friendly with them all. Between the 4 seas was lamentation where he died. Love covers his grave like roses. Okay. Now, I always love when there is original writing in a book. Some people say it's a sin to do that. Kind of like it's a sin to talk too much about these things, I found out earlier. But look at this, where whoever this was added this little thing. He used to trudge so cheerfully in the nights and the bad weather. His grave is never alone. And then, of course, it goes down to, and there's always a beggar praying by his grave. Okay. Here where we end, we will move into the beginning of the next episode of this chapter. But I thought I'd bring you a poem. Let me get this situated right. Okay. To the beloved dead, you light of laughter's happiest, in the old times what joy, what jest, but now the times are sad and new, all of our laughter gone with you, the old times were ever the best. You were as wild as the west wind, the west wind that's wild and kind. Nothing could bind you, nothing keep. You are gone over the hills of sleep. Be free, beloved, as the west wind. You gave with both hands over and over, and every poor man was your lover. Whoever turned from you unfed, heavy-hearted, uncomforted, may God repay you over and over. O light of youth, 'tis well you go before the winter and the snow. For who could think of you, a mourner, an old man in a chimney corner, quiet and glad of rest? Ah, no. You light of laughter, wild and giving, who could wish you said, length of living? But all our laughter goes with you, you and the morning and the dew. 'Tis a sad world of care and grieving. Pretty interesting. This is volume 13 of the Bibelot, and this was the one that I vibed out a few days ago. So we'll continue on and study more of these series of works. So for now, peace, love, and light from Sue's World. Take care.